Countrywide Connect with Andy Thompson and Sarah Perriam-Lamp.
We're going to talk now to Craig Hattle, incoming chair of the New Zealand Farm Assurance. He has taken over from Nick Beebe. Craig, g'day, mate. Welcome to the show. Really appreciate your time. Thanks for joining us. Sorry to keep you waiting.
No worries. Good, Andy. Good to have you. Good to be here. Thank you.
Mate, before we get into it, why don't you just give us a bit of an update on what the New Zealand Farm Assurance organisation is? What do you do?
So the New Zealand Farm Assurance owns and runs the scheme NZFAP. Rather unfortunate name, but that's what it is, NZFAP and NZFAP Plus. It's essentially as the scheme owners, it's the assurance scheme that gives us as an opportunity as farmers to showcase what we do, what most farmers already really do. And through our processes, this allows us to show the market that this is actually how we farm. We're the best in the world. This is what we do. And the scheme is set up in such a way to give us that opportunity to put our best foot forward in the market.
All right, I want to talk about the scheme and how you actually do that. But first and foremost, is this about social license or is this about market access?
Well, both of those things are hand in hand. At the end of the day, as chair of the of NZFAI, my role is to preserve the integrity of the system. So what does that mean? This is the system that we're dealing with is a trust building system. And so that's very, very different to a compliance system. And I think there's been a bit of a misunderstanding, and we need to change that narrative a bit. So a trust building system absolutely has both elements of what you just said. It's the market access is built on trust, and social license is a different level of trust at the far end of the chain. So both of those are true once you start viewing this as a trust building system.
So I see social license more as a local issue, and market access obviously as an access to our export markets. But how does the scheme, or how does the farm assurance and scheme then actually work? What sort of things do you do to make sure that both of those aspects are actually being recorded, being reported, and that trust is being maintained? What's the nuts and bolts actual things that happen?
So a good scheme is built on three pillars. Maybe just keep it at a high level first, and we can unpack each of them. But a really good scheme is built on three pillars. First of all, it has to be independent. It has to be seen and to be believed as being independent. Secondly, it has to be credible. So the standards that we choose to farm by have to be credibly believed by whoever needs to believe them in the market. And the third pillar, they have to be eminently practical, because farmers have to actually be able to implement. So what I see the role of us in the governance of the scheme itself is to build these three: independence, credibility, and practicality.
Okay. And so within that then, what sort of things is the scheme looking for? What are you testing, or what are the things that actually within the farming operation that are of importance?
The key elements of a good, profitable, sustainable farming system are in fact the elements that are being measured and reported upon in the scheme. And that needs to be always checked back to ensure that those are the standard requirements. So in the standard, there's requirements around animal welfare, standards around soil, pasture management. But as you know, if every farmer knows that good animal welfare equals better profitability, better pasture management and managing for worms equals better profitability, optimizing fertilizers and water management. And all of those are the elements, the processes that are measured and reported on as a scheme participant.
So sorry to keep coming back to this because I'm just intrigued how this works. Are you then looking at what our base animal welfare rules are, what our base environment, as a I suppose, as part of our consents to farm, or the rules that regional councils might put on us, or the animal welfare organisations? Is that the baseline, and then we go from there, and that's what we show to our export markets or the people you're reporting to, or is it more than that? And then you've got the NZFAP plus. Is that another structure?
Yeah, so there's three levels. There's a couple of levels. The base structure is, although this isn't a compliance, so this isn't regulation per se, our assumption is that all farmers in fact comply with regulation. So there's no attempt on farm to check that you are complying with regulation. They are there. But if you choose to farm in a certain way and you have animal welfare standards that perhaps go above and beyond compliance, you need to have a conduit that standard that you've chosen to farm by actually means something when you get into the market. So both of what you said is true. Yes, we have to comply with the basic regulation, and NZFAP Plus and the gold standard allows us to go that step further if you choose to do so.
Yeah, so our exporters will come to you, go, okay, so these farmers have reached this standard, so we're comfortable. And I don't mean to make this flippant, but we've ticked that box, right? And I don't want to make it a box ticking exercise. I shouldn't have said that. But do you understand what I'm saying?
Well, you're absolutely correct, and thank you for reiterating that it's not a box ticking exercise.
Yeah.
And if it's viewed like that, it'll be very hard for a farmer to, you don't run your farm in a bunch of boxes. A farm is a living system, and so each of the processes, which are, because the scheme itself is certified, it's a product certification, and in our case, it's a process certification. So it's the process that is being certified, and of course, you add together a whole lot of on-farm processes. That's your farming system. So it's the way that we choose to farm is what's being had a look at. You don't want to be looking at any one individual item, although in aggregate, of course, you do that.
And we know how important all this is because we've got some very important trade deals, free trade agreements with Europe, UK. There's lots of different organisations or different countries actually that want to reduce our access to our markets, right? This is a way to guarantee that we're doing what we say we'll do.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Look, the international trade environment has really, really changed. There's far more emphasis on bilateral arrangements, as you just said, and so just because you have a free trade arrangement with a country does not mean that you will automatically be able to ship all your product there. And invariably, those free trade agreements have been signed on the basis that there is a well-trusted, well-governed, internationally accredited assurance program in place in the country. Yeah. So that's how we got there in the first place.
So, Craig, you've just come into this role as the new chair. What are going to be your priorities moving into this role?
So I think the first priority is to just re-understand the narrative that we're talking about. For farmers, there's a huge compliance overload or a perception of a massive overburden of being forced to do stuff. And I think we need, the first step is engagement with farmers, reassuring that farmers actually, you probably are doing everything that's needed here. We just need to give you the opportunity through an audit process, a verification process, to show that to the market. So that's the early first step, and ensure that our scheme rules allow us to do that in a way that ensures we're practical and implementable on farm.
All right, Craig, really appreciate your time on the show. Looking forward to chatting to it. Good luck with the new role. And I understand that Nick Beebe's obviously moved on, and well done to him. He was there for quite some time. So thank you, and looking forward to chatting further.
Very good. Appreciate it. Thanks, Andy.
Countrywide Connect with Andy Thompson and Sarah Perriam-Lapp.